For the benefit of the audience, how did you move from one job to another? What has been your journey into the finance side?
Because of my CFA, I got my first job. They just called me in. They wanted an intern.
How did you come from engineering to finance?
I said, "There's nothing I know about finance, sir, and I don't know how am I going to do it." He's like, "No, you just register for it and just go for it." So I was like, "Okay." I registered.
For
This
the
was
exam?
for the exam. For the
Okay.
exam, I registered for the exam. I saw 10 subjects. I didn't know what the 10 subjects in depth were.
I had seen also when I was working that a lot of these banks are now moving towards technology. So it's more fintech driven. So they need somebody who understands the technology side.
So pick any favorite company of yours.
Tata Motors.
Tata Motors. You see, Tata Motors is trending.
Does engineering students in the finance role, do they get some advantage?
Yes. Yes.
What is that advantage? Hello friends, hi, this is Ganesh Nayak. Welcome to our podcast, which we are doing for the first time and physical format. Now we have with us Sanjyot Baviskar, who is going to be talking to us about his journey of working in the finance space. Okay, he has been working in investment banking with a mechanical engineering background, and now he's working into investment relationship roles or investor relationship roles. So he's going to be telling us about his journey of the finance side and what all things he has learned. And from for the viewer's perspective, he's going to give the perspective of how to make a successful career. So let us start with the discussion. First of all, thank you very much and taking out time for this session.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm happy to share, everything that I've learned till now.
Perfect. So, for the benefit of the audience, how did you move from one job to another? Okay, till now, what has been your journey into the finance side?
So, first of all, I started, in mechanical. I did my engineering, and after engineering, I went into investment banking as an intern at
Okay.
Equirus Securities. So in over there, it was more like, I think it was because of my CFA, I got my first job. They just called me in. They wanted an intern,
Okay.
and then that's how I got my first role. And after that, it was just through the qualifications and everything that just
Okay.
took me through a journey.
Okay. So it was the first role was an intern in investment bank. Then you
Yes,
went
yes.
to.
Then I went to a VC firm.
Okay.
I worked at a venture capital firm in Malaysia called Catcha Group. Over there, I was a part of the proper core deals team as a venture associate, as a venture analyst, where I was evaluating companies, where I was evaluating unicorns of US and Europe and all these high valued companies over there,
Right.
and how can these business models be replicated in the Southeast Asian market. So
Okay.
we were creating multiple decks and these research tables and these research models, and we were presenting it to the GPs, general partners and limited partners, and talking about how much seed investment would be required, or what is the current economic standpoint of these countries, that can this be replicated or not, because not
Okay.
all models can be replicated. So that was the more role over there.
Okay.
Then COVID happened. I came back to India, and in India, then I started with proper investor relations role. Investor relations is something which is into the equity, proper equity capital markets. Previously I was in the private markets, and in the equity market is just a different ball game altogether, and it's a different kind of information, and it's a different kind of skill set that is required. So
Okay.
yeah, that has been my journey on all sides of both private and now public
Right.
finance.
So very basic question. So did you thought much before changing roles? Because all of these roles are very different.
Right.
So what was there in your mind when you were changing roles? Was it by nature that you wish to go for experience into different areas?
So that's not the case.
Okay.
So for me, to do something matters, not to get into a specific role. So I understand there are a lot of, even my peers are like, they only want an economist role, they only want a business analyst role. But I was like, okay, wherever I can push my boundaries and get to know, learn more, or push my horizons more, or get to more front facing roles, I was open to that. And of course, it comes with a lot of experimenting. That
Okay.
is something I did early on, but it was good experiments early on. That's how it converted into something better.
Okay. Perfect. And for the audience, how did you come from engineering to finance?
I mean, I actually never thought that I was going to get into finance, because I was in my engineering, and my deputy vice chancellor was someone who said, because he was the only one who was teaching engineering mathematics too, who was the deputy chancellor. He
Hmm.
loved teaching, and he and I had a great connect. So he saw that I like to do difficult things, मैथमेटिक्स हो, नहीं तो वो thermodynamics के lectures हो. I used to sit back and used to ask questions also. I was a part of a research role also with his experiments, and the research was something like, he wanted to make quantum dot solar cells, using silicon as a
Okay.
material. So he wanted to see if that's possible. So I was in that kind of a zone. And then he said, you know what, since you like difficult things, there's a friend of mine who has done CFA. Why don't you think about that? I said, there's nothing I know about finance, sir, and I don't know how am I going to do it. He's like, no, you just register for it and just go for it. So I was like, okay. I registered.
For
This
the
was
exam.
for the exam. For the
Okay.
exam, I registered for the exam. I saw 10 subjects. I didn't know what the 10 subjects in depth were.
Okay.
Honestly, I thought, I'm being very honest, I thought it is an exam like PMP. That
Project management. Yeah.
project management. I genuinely thought it was an exam like that. So this was after engineering. I still didn't show anything. I didn't show any huge interest towards that exam or towards finance. तो फिर धीरे धीरे somewhere I was like कुछ difficult करना है, that engineering mindset is there, something challenging I need. So I applied for that exam. I registered, and when the books came, I was like, this is कुछ ज़्यादा ही मोटी है किताब. So so I had to, I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? So वहाँ से ही शुरुआत, हो गया
Okay.
finance का proper to get into it.
And then you cleared CFA.
I cleared, yeah, I cleared level 1, and I cleared it within around good within 100 days, I can say.
Okay.
And but I was full-fledged studying only. I was dedicated everything to studying that time.
Okay.
I finished my internship, and then at the same time, it was kind of both. The internship also ended at the same time, and then I started studying also for it.
Okay. Now, once very different question. So, because you have been into the industry for so long, does engineering students in the finance role, do they get some advantage?
Yes.
What is that advantage?
See, first of all, I'm sorry that engineering students get a bit of advantage, because there are a lot of time what happens is this BA and BCom get very pissed off कि आप हमारे भी jobs लेके जा रहे हो. So engineering students do get an advantage, and the reason why is because they have that analytical mindset.
Yes.
Now there are a lot of concepts in in physics, that Brownian motion ho तुम्हारा Newton's law of thermodynamics, thermodynamics, there's Newton's laws. There are all these things which are there, where somehow somewhere, if you know these calculations, or if you know these things, somewhere it's related to finance, somewhere it's related to equities, somewhere it's
Right.
related to analysis. So yes, that's how these two things are connected. And I hate to say this, but somewhere engineering students have a slight benefit.
So I'll just add to what he is saying. So what I had seen also when I was working, that a lot of these banks are now moving towards technology. So it's more fintech driven.
Uh-huh.
So they need somebody who understand the technology side and understand the finance side also. So having an engineering plus a finance degree gives them a good advantage.
Right.
Because banks technology side is very complicated.
Right.
So you already have a background and then you learn about it, right?
So I was just sharing from a student's perspective.
Yes. But I've seen that happening when I was also working.
Yes.
Engineers were getting good salaries. It was
Yes,
not like
yes.
that you're very new to finance.
Yes,
It was
yes,
not
true.
like that. Now, for the benefit of the audience, investment banking role that you did and the current role, or basically the investor relationship role, what is the difference between these two roles? And before we go to that, what exactly you do in investment relation role?
So first of all, investment banking is, I was in Equirus, their Kurla office. I was working in this team called the big data team, the fintech team. So what happens is, these boutique banks or these banks, 90% of, when you're hired as an analyst, your job is to analyze less, research more. The reason why I say analyze less is because they wait for you to get promoted until a certain level, then you can put your analysis brain, because you're used to the data that comes to you.
Right.
So for the first few years you have to get used to gathering data, researching data. At Equirus, or in my first job over there, my job was, let's say there's some IPO filing that is going to happen. So for that, all the data that's required for their deck, I had to scrape their
Okay.
entire data.
Okay.
So it may sound like it's tough, but at the same time you have to also, they will ask you that, okay, what is the similarity between the spending power of a average Indian versus a Brazilian? Because we are talking about, I'm not going to say a name, but
It is
let's say
related to the IPO that is
it's yes, it is related to an IPO that is happening. So you have to have these comparables, and you have to make that research, and you have to deliver on that research. So that was something I was doing, which was very pure research role, nothing analysis, no such analysis was required.
Okay.
Versus an investor relations role right now. You see, investor relations is a very new field that has come up. And the reason why I say that is because 10 years before, people did not know investor relations. It was something listed companies had their company secretary doing.
Right.
Right. So investor relations is something that it's much more of a stakeholder management. That's one. But second is, there's so many, especially in today's time, there's so many listings that are happening. But you need to get your story out there. You
Right.
need to get your promoter story out there. That, let's say you are handling a client, or you are a part of a listed company, and you are an investor relations person, dedicated person for that. Your job is to get your story out there and try to justify as much as you can if you believe in the promoter. And that's the difference between an investment banking role versus an IR role. Now IR role is more like going out there, meeting people, communicating what your vision is, what your promoter's vision is.
Okay.
And basing it against your peers. That is something, and trying to reach the fair value, or trying to get that fair value of your company. Versus an IB. IB is very glamorized. I do not know why, but investor relations much more. It tests you also. It's very
Now,
fun.
one of the reason also we are doing this podcast is that lot of students, they are not aware about the investor relation role. Everybody who is doing CFA or any of these certification, they feel that it is only going to be investment bank.
Right.
Okay. So you can bring that perspective of
Yes.
what exactly is this role. So if I ask you on a day-to-day basis in your role, what do you do broadly?
So see, it's a very, so the good part about this is that was now, since we have taken investment banking as a benchmark. See, investment banking, you will be stuck to a sector. Let's say you're a tech sector's investment banking analyst, you will be doing only tech, right? But when you come to an IR perspective, you have so many sectors with you. So I have to sometimes look at insurance, I look at pharma, I also look at the auto ancillary space.
Okay.
There was an there was an oil company which has come to me also. So there are so many sectors that have come. Now the idea is to first gather the perspective of what the market has about your client.
Barabar.
Right. Let's say so pick any favorite company of yours. Tata. Which Tata you would
Tata
want
Motors.
to? Tata Motors. You see, Tata Motors is trending in the past 5 days. So Tata Motors is at all-time high. Now what the management will say is, Sanjyot or Ganesh sir, our stock is at an all-time high right now. The board is asking you कि sir, the stock is at all-time high. Analyst sell तो नहीं बोलेंगे ना. So you have to come back to the analyst and be like, okay, you have to go to an ICICI security analyst, you have to go to a UBS analyst, and see what is their perspective, or try to communicate that we are still undervalued, or we are still at a fair price. Try not to change that, buy into sell or buy into hold. Of course they will have their own set of thought process, but it's your job as an investor relations to communicate that vision and that equity story versus any other auto.
Okay.
Versus any other auto company.
Okay, perfect. And also, if you look at if you can just share us with the audience that what has been your experience of working in the VC side in Kuala Lumpur,
Okay.
and the way we are working over here in terms of cultural difference also, and the industry difference, because VC and your IR.
So there are two parts to this, right? So when we are talking about VC, venture capital is very like, they are profit making machines. They don't care if they don't care if the business is making money. but they are profit making machines, meaning they will influx as much capital as they want until and unless they get that growth, that additional
Mm-hmm.
growth. So the idea was to listen to deals, listen to deals, be part of the deal making process. Just listen, and to later maybe give an input key, okay, this does not sound good, or this is just very promoter driven, just how equity stories are. It is very promoter driven, the same way private markets are, it's very promoter driven. And
Right.
the thing is, one important thing is, coming from an Indian perspective, what they will ask is, I think there was a company called Rev Asia, or Cars Asia. I can't exactly remember. It was in their portfolio. It is something that Droom does in India.
Okay.
So what they will expect out of you as an analyst is, can you liaise with someone from Droom in India, or can you give us some Indian perspective of on how the market is, and can you collate that data for us? So you have to use, of course, you have that education is just a gateway, but at that time you have to use your channel checks, you have to perform your own independent analysis, that team can depend on you, because you're
Okay.
coming from a different geography. So that is something that, it's a cultural difference that they will expect you to bring to the table.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Now, if somebody wants to enter into the investor relationship role, what exactly is the skill set that is needed in terms of education also and soft skill also?
See, for investor relations, minimum is an MBA finance,
Hmm.
right? Minimum is an MBA. CFA is now starting to get very important.
Hmm.
CFA is the next thing that people should pick up on, and the more important thing when it comes to IR is like, how can you communicate a story, or let's say how can you turn around the story also. Let's say, there's a lot of companies right now which may not be performing well.
Hmm.
Can you pick another story, even another company, any other
Z.
company? Let's say Z is having a merger, right? But the merger didn't happen. Now you as an IR professional need to come and sit with the board of directors, and then have to formulate a strategy with them on how to communicate what's happening,
Hmm.
because instantly stock lower circuit pe ja sakta hai over the next 5 days.
Right.
So as an IR, you need to be hands on, you need to be ready, you need to speak to the key investors, marquee investors. So let's say the retail people are selling, but at the same time you need to ensure the mutual funds do not sell, because
Hmm.
वो म्यूचुअल फंड अगर करने लगेंगे तो कुछ कोई आपको भाव नहीं देगा बाद में.
Right.
So
Okay.
as an IR professional, you need to have that cognizance that कि आप एक स्ट्रैटेजी बना सकते हो, आप एक, इट्स लाइक एन कंसल्टिंग रोल ओनली, इट्स समथिंग लाइक कंसल्टिंग ओनली. आप एक स्ट्रैटेजी बना सकते हो ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन, आप एक स्ट्रैटेजी बना सकते हो स्टोरी का. किसी भी स्मॉल, देखो जितना स्मॉलर कंपनी रहेगा, स्मॉल कैप जितना कंपनी रहेगा उतना डिफिकल्ट रहता है, बिकॉज लार्ज कैप्स एंड मिड कैप्स एवरीवन नो.
Yes.
Small caps is something you can always say today's small cap is tomorrow's mid cap, and tomorrow's mid cap is day after tomorrow's large cap. So you can use these little nitty gritty points to create that perception, to create that strategy for communication. And I have to highlight one thing, is it's a very crucial role, because you can make or break a company's perception in the market.
Right.
So that is why an IR professional is very much important in today's ecosystem of
Okay.
capital markets.
But from the education perspective, like you said, CFA. So
CFA.
technical, or say, for example, in terms of understanding the balance sheet or numbers, how much important is that for your role?
So you have to, so the process which I follow is, there's, so we have this softwares, we have Bloomberg and everything, we have the Bloomberg terminal and everything. We create this estimate sheets, we create a forward multiple, we have all of
Mhm.
that, and we have to understand why is that multiple given.
Okay.
That is the story we need to understand. So कि अभी there was one client of ours, जिसका DCF calculation किया था, and we had to go back to the analyst and understand ये WACC क्यों use किया, ये particular
Mhm.
percentage क्यों use किया है growth multiple के लिए. So before even to reach that, you have to know कि company के finances कैसे है. Business is one thing, but the numbers, how are the numbers changing, because tomorrow the analyst can say like aapka working capital is gone for a toss. So you need to have that patience to understand the company, to give that knowledge, that time from what you gather from CFA to to deep dive into the numbers. And that is why the certification and everything comes together. That is the
Wow.
angle.
So, and now you're also preparing for CFA level 2.
Yes, yes.
This would go hands in hand to what you're doing
Correct, correct,
almost in terms of few books that you're going to prepare.
correct, correct.
Now, final question to you. One advice which you would give to the audience or students who are giving these exams or who are planning to get into the finance side and especially the IR side. What would be that one advice?
See, everyone wants to come to the markets more than, I mean, career is amazing thing. Everyone wants to have a career, but everyone wants to make money at the end of the day. Everyone wants to come to the capital markets to make money. Now, if you're looking at certificates just from a certifications point of view, I mean, I would advise you to, that this is more than that. It's going to require more information than that, and you have to go to the extra distance to to get that knowledge out there, to get that network out there. Network is something that is the next thing you should be targeting after CFA, to be honest. So these things really come together for any professional, and you can use this network, knowledge, and experience for your own investing purposes, because at the end of the day, after 25 years, we all are going to retire, right, sir? So at the end of the day, everything is going to come together, and everything is also going to benefit you and the employer that you will work for.
Perfect, perfect. So thank you very much, Sanjot, for joining us. Audience, we're going to be closing with the podcast, but we're going to be coming up with similar podcast in the future where we're going to be getting people from the industry to come over here, talk about their experience so that the audience, students who are preparing for these exams can get the perspective of what is there on the other side, apart from the education, what is there in the industry, and they can choose their field in finance properly. So thank you very much for joining us today.